Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Blacktop. I'm here with Worlds all day. Lionel's taking a leave of absence for today because he got a lot going on. He's a busy man, but a lot has happened this past week of sports. First thing, let's talk about the NBA. So the Milwaukee Bucks, surprisingly, the number one seed in the entire Eastern Conference, are down 3-1 to the fifth seed Miami Heat. They won Game 4, 118 to 115, but despite winning Game 4, battling off elimination, they probably lost their key best player, their franchise player, Giannis Antetokounmpo, who went down with an apparent sprained ankle injury. So the Bucks live to fight another day, but what does that mean for the face of the franchise, presumptively the two-time back-to-back NBA MVP? I just want to get your takes on the game, and do you think Giannis will play in Game 5 because he's listed as questionable right now?
Well, last weekend, what did I say? Did I not call the Heat to win the series?
Mm-hmm.
So, I told you guys, Miami just has that complete team. They have great defenders, they have great shooters, and then Jimmy Butler has even stepped up his game even more this series. We're seeing like what Jimmy Butler was looking like previously before he left Chicago, because when he was at Chicago in his later years, he was looking like that next great player, and he was so good with Philly and Minnesota, but he's kind of come back to that, that top level, and we're seeing him taking it to another level now. But I want to give credit to Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder has been really impressive. He's not getting enough credit, especially what you've seen where he's come from. Like when he first came into the league, he could not shoot to save his life. He's always been a great defender, but he could not shoot to save his life. But now he's improved his three-point shooting vastly, and especially last night, he was shooting crazy. So he deserves a lot of credit, like a lot of credit. He's helped leading those young guys because Miami's still a very young team, but they just have such a complete team. I'm not surprised that they're up 3-1. I think it'd be more of a close series, but I still have Miami winning this series, even though they lost last night. But I think the difference is that you see Middleton. Middleton stepped up, and if I'm the Bucks, I would always want Middleton to take those final shots. I'm sorry, like I know Giannis is that superstar. He's an elite player. Obviously, he's about to be a two-time MVP, but he's just not clutch at this point. He's just not clutch. He can't close games, in my opinion. So Middleton should be taking those last-minute shots, and he needs to keep on doing what he did last night. He closed out the game for them last night. He needs to keep on doing that. But he has a lot on his plate for this next couple of games if they even win the next game. So I still have Miami winning this series. I didn't think they'd be up this much, but I think Miami's probably going to close it out unless Middleton just completely erupts next game.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on that point. Chris Middleton, after Giannis went down, showed that he can actually be a legit number one. The man scored 36 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, almost flirted around and had himself a triple-double. But it goes to show you that when your star player is out, they have a tendency to just sit and watch, because say if LeBron James goes down for the Lakers, everyone's going to sit and watch because he's their best player. But now when your best player goes down, it kind of gives you that alert. All right, guys, we got to move the ball around. We got to play more effort on the defensive side of the basketball. So, and especially too, Milwaukee, they're a prideful team. You can't be the number one seed in Eastern Conference and get swept by a fifth seed. So pride kind of kicked in. It's like, you know what? Let's do this for Giannis. Chris Middleton, their second best player, showed up. I mean, he hit that clutch 3 to send the game into overtime, which over 2 defenders, which was a huge shot. That literally saved their season. But to give credit to the Bucks, man, I mean, they scaved off elimination. I still think Miami's gonna win this series eventually. There's a reason why no team in NBA history has come back down 3-0 and won the series, and I don't think it's gonna happen, especially with a tough, gritty team like Miami. Thing with the Heat, I feel like they found a way to defend Giannis. They kind of took the playbook from what Toronto did last year and build that wall. You can't let Giannis drive to the basket, especially in transition, because it's going to be dunk city all night long. So there's like, you know what? You got to throw different bodies at him. They throw Andre Iguodala, Jay Crowder, Jimmy Butler defends him time to time. Duncan Robinson defends him time to time. And when you see, hey, he's driving in transition, all eyes are literally focused on Giannis. They literally stack up a wall in the paint so he does get through, and it's forcing him to kick it out to shooters. And when he's out of control, it creates turnovers on the offensive side of the basketball for the Bucks. But give credit to the Mike Budenholzer, the head coach, Chris Middleton, man. that performance is like, you know what, this guy could legit be a true number one option if he's in the right system. He doesn't get a lot of credit because he's playing behind Giannis, who obviously we all think is going to be the back-to-back MVP this season. But I feel like you said Miami's eventually going to win. Can't come back 3-0. Jimmy Butler is not going to let that happen. And soon as the Giannis injury, as soon as Giannis went down with the injury, we kind of saw Miami take their foot off the gas, and the momentum and the urgency went on the Milwaukee Bucks side.
And then another thing is that Giannis can't shoot free throws. Another thing I said last Sunday, they could legit hack Giannis and they could get away with it because he can't shoot to save his life. So that's another big thing. And then you got to give Jimmy Butler and Jay Crowder, they don't get enough credit because Jimmy Butler, he's one of the few, he's one of a kind because he's not the guy that wants to join a super team. You know, he doesn't want to join like a bunch of other star players. He said that when he joined Miami. He's not with that kind of stuff. He's one of the very few that doesn't like joining super teams and stuff. He wanted to start his own thing in Miami, and they've already exceeded expectations vastly. I always saw Miami as a good team before the season started, but I think by far they exceeded everyone's expectations. And he doesn't get enough credit because he grew up in a great system. You got to think from Chicago to Minnesota to Philly. He just, developed around great players, especially in Chicago, like Luol Deng, Derrick Rose, and this was MVP Derrick Rose at the time. So Derrick Rose, Luol Deng, Joakim Noah, just solid defensive-minded players that he grew, especially Tom Thibodeau, even though, he runs his plays into the ground. But so he grew up in a great system. So you just see the type of player that he developed to now. It's just great to see.
And one thing I kind of want to point what you said. One thing, a reason why we saw Jimmy Butler chose the Miami Heat was because they already had a culture growing of hard work and dedication. If you come to Miami, you're going to play hard. And you look at the type of players that they build. Look at Chris Nunn. He was not a first round. I don't even think he was drafted at all this year. He was an undrafted signee, and he has made a name for himself down in Miami. You look at Duncan Robinson, same thing. He was an undrafted rookie, made a name for himself down in Miami. You look at the long list of Heat players. Udonis Haslem was not, I believe he was a second round draft pick. He made himself a name. So if you come to Miami, they are great at picking talent and gems that are not, high marquee prospects. So
and then Eric
you look
deserves the most. He's the Hall of Fame coach by far. Eric
yeah.
Is going to be a Hall of Fame coach.
Oh yeah, especially we seen what he did with the big three, and people were calling for his job because they lost the first year, and it was like LeBron was like, "Well, I want Pat Riley to come." I was like, "No, we believe in this guy," and that's one thing too. But Miami, there's a really firm structure to that organization. Everybody knows their role. They know what they're supposed to do day in and day out. And it's like, you know what? Jimmy Butler saw that was a perfect opportunity for him. And he believes, obviously, he's the best player. But the thing with Miami, they're still going to try to improve next year. They have cap space to sign another big-time marquee free agent. Maybe that could be Giannis who comes to them. Maybe that could be somebody like a Bradley Beal. Who knows? But Miami, for right now, for years to come, they have the identity, they have the grit, they have the work ethic. I must be surprised that this team will be representing the Eastern Conference for years to come, because this was definitely a shock to me, the fact that they're up 3-1 against the number one seed in the entire NBA record-wise.
Weird.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go over to the Houston Rockets and the LA Lakers. So that series is now tied 1-1. LeBron James had himself a game yesterday. So did Anthony Davis. They combined for 62 points of the dynamic duo for the purple and gold. Now the series is tied 1-1. Russell Westbrook did not have himself a great game. I just wanted to know, what were your thoughts on game 2, and who do you still think will win the series between Rockets and the Lakers?
Oh, Lakers, definitely Lakers. We saw the real Russell Westbrook in the last game. I'm surprised he won the first game. Completely shocked. I think Houston took the Lakers off guard, but we saw who Houston really is last night. Westbrook was 4-15, and just had some terrible turnovers, 7 turnovers last night. He was just that was the real Russell Westbrook that we usually see in the playoffs. Like, he just turns the ball over, does not shoot efficiently, and he can really. That's why players leave. That's why they never really build around him, because Paul George, KD, all these type of players, they leave because he's a great player. He's an amazing player, but he needs to. I don't want to sound disrespectful, but he needs to learn his role. if it makes sense, because it's like he shouldn't be the guy with the ball in his hands in the last final minutes, unless you're doing like a pick and roll, or if he's cutting to the basket, something like that. Then yes, but besides that, he should not be the guy that's taking the last shot, unless it's like a layup or something like that. Then yes, because he can attack the hoop for sure, but. I do not want that guy taking a jump shot in the last final minutes. I might not even want him handling the ball because he just acts too sporadic. And then when you kind of lock him down, he just gets crazy. Like some of the passes he made in those final minutes were just ridiculous. And he honestly he should have been benched because like some of those moves were just ridiculous. So I think for Houston to rebound, Westbrook's going to have to do better. Definitely give James Harden the ball more. But I still have the Lakers winning this series. I'll probably say maybe in 6. But I see more so in 5. I was totally surprised Houston won the first game, but Lakers are going to take the series.
See, the thing with Houston Rockets, there's different dynamics on that team. Obviously, we all know James Harden. He's the head. He's the best player. Russell Westbrook obviously takes a back seat to him. But nobody on the sidelines, I don't even think with Coach D'Antoni, they don't hold Russell Westbrook accountable. And you talk about hold up. It looks like watching the game last night, the man forgot how to pass a basketball. 7 turnovers? Man almost had a double-double, 10 points and then 7 turnovers. That's not good basketball right there. And if you see a guy making wild passes, you got to have somebody, James Harden, PJ Tucker, one of the leaders on Houston, is like, bro, dude, what are you doing? Like, just make the simple passes. There was a lot of plays he was just out of control. He shot the Lakers back into the game because there was at one point LA went up the 20-point lead. I believe it was 42 to 20 something. And then you come right back and Houston comes right back. And then next thing you know, they just pull away towards the end of the game. But I'm going to go. I feel like Houston, I've always said this, Houston has the recipe to beat the Lakers just because of their small ball type of play style. You know, even though they got PJ Tucker playing the 5, and they just throw it to Anthony Davis and to Dwight Howard, they're just going to abuse them in the paint. But the fact that the Lakers only won by 8, and you had to have almost a great game from Anthony Davis, who had a double-double, 34 points. LeBron James had to chip in with 28. Markieff Morris, had 16 points. Man hit 4 consecutive threes in a row. When are we ever going to see that again? So, and they only won by 8, and then took a bad game from Russell Westbrook. I don't think we're going to see Russell Westbrook have any more 10-point per night games along with 7 turnovers. But I feel like Houston has the best formula outside of the Clippers to beat the Lakers just because that small ball. When they made that trade for Robert Covington, I believe Houston's first opponent in the regular season was the Lakers.
Yo, yeah, you froze for like a good minute. Oh. At least on my end, yeah. So have to
am I good now?
Yeah, you good now. I just have to restart my laptop. I mean, not my laptop, but restart the page. If you just want to start like right after we was talking about Westbrook. So if you just want to restart what you was talking about right after that.
Oh yeah, well, we'll talk about Russell Westbrook. I believe that he forgot how to play basketball last night. I mean, he forgot how to pass. You can't be a superstar point guard, one of the top 5 point guards recognized, right now in today's game, and have 7 turnovers. That's unacceptable. Especially we know James Harden is the alpha dog. Russell Westbrook takes a backseat to him. But if you look at how, the Lakers played, I mean, I don't want to say Herculean effort, but LeBron had to chip in with 28. Anthony Davis had himself a great game, 34 and 10. And when are we going to see Marcus Morris hit 4 3-pointers in a row? Man finished with 16 points, I believe. So he came out swinging, and they only won by 8 points despite a horrible game for Russell Westbrook. I believe that Houston has a formula to beat the Lakers because of that small ball lineup, and Mike D'Antoni, he is an offensive-minded genius type of coach. We've seen that, obviously PJ Tucker and Robert Covington, they're going to get abused in the paint by Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard and whoever's defending them because they just throw the ball down low. But it's in transition where it hurts the Lakers bigs. And I feel like LA is going to have to attempt to adjust to Houston's play style, which they won't do. Like I said when we did the show previous, I believe that LeBron James is going to have to play more of the 4, and Anthony Davis, he is playing the 5, but he's going to have to play the 5 for the rest of the series. I believe that you won't see Dwight Howard or JaVale McGee as much because, again, JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard, they're not offensive minded centers. They're more of the defensive minded centers. They'll, alter shots in the paint. They'll get you a couple block shots. They'll get you maybe 10, 12 rebounds a game. But they aren't gonna, have Anthony Davis point production inside the paint when he could give you 25, 30 points a night. I that's personally me. I feel like it's still gonna be a 6-7 game series, but outside the Clippers, I feel like Houston has the best formula to beat LA. I don't think we're going to see another 10-point performance night from Russell Westbrook. He got to go back to the basic basketball fundamentals and learn how to pass the basketball. Somebody, whether it's PJ Tucker, James Harden, on that Rockets side is going to be like, yo, dude, you're playing out of control. Calm the hell down. Just make the simple passes. You're doing too much out there in the court, and it's costing them. And you look at, I believe, Lakers, they went up by as much as 16. They came back. The game was tied in the fourth quarter, and then they eventually pull away because LeBron James hit a clutch turnaround to pretty much ice the game. But if Russell Westbrook can kind of get his act together, I feel like in his mind, he's still trying to think that he's that guy from OKC. He's still a superstar player. He's still very explosive. But we all know that Houston best player is James Harden. You can say Westbrook is 1A. He's right next to him. But the ball's got to go through James Harden number one. He's the number one guy, and he's the first option for them on the offensive side of the basketball.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just ridiculous because in the fourth quarter, Harden only took 3 field goal attempts while Westbrook took 5. And while I'll give the Lakers credit, they were doing a good job of, denying Harden the ball. You still got to give him you got to find a way to get him the ball. Like only 3 field goal attempts.
Yeah.
In the fourth quarter is ridiculous. While Westbrook has 5 and he only made 1 of them, he's 0 of 3 from 3 in the fourth quarter. While Harden was only 1 of 2. Like you got to give Harden the ball more. Like that's just ridiculous. And then I'll even put some blame on Eric Gordon too. He had 0 points in the fourth quarter because he is their shooter. Honestly, he's a better shooter than Westbrook too. He's a great 3-point shooter. So those guys have to get the ball more, especially when they're, when Lakers made that comeback. Those guys have to take more of those shots in the later minutes of that game. So I think Houston still won't, I don't really see it going that far. You are right. Lakers, I don't see Morris having a game like that again, but I still have the Lakers going over the Rockets pretty soon.
The thing with the Lakers, I feel like LeBron and Anthony Davis have to do so much of the load offensively. Like the only point production that they got was from Kyle Kuzma, who's been inconsistent throughout the whole playoffs. He finished with 13, and Rondo finished with 10. I don't think Rajon Rondo, I believe, for the season averages under 9 points a game. He's more of a facilitator. He's like an extension of the coach on the court. We talked about how Kyle Kuzma is inconsistent. Marcus Morris, he's mainly there for his defense, his tenacity, and his ability to just throw bodies at other forwards so he could give LeBron James a break here and then. But if you really look at it on the other end, like Danny Green, he was there to be a 3-point sniper. He only had 9 points in 31 minutes of action yesterday. Contavious Caldwell-Pope, he had 5 points. And again, he's another 3-point shooter that was inconsistent again last night too. So I just feel like that, they got all these scores. Dion Waiters, even though he didn't play much, I believe he played like under 5 minutes. They got all these snipers to surround LeBron. And yet when you give them the basketball at the 3-point line, they don't make shots. It's like, all right, that puts more onus on LeBron and Anthony Davis on the scoring load because they have to score more if the other guys aren't carrying their weight.
No, definitely. I agree with that.
All right. I believe there was another team out in LA, the Los Angeles Clippers. They're going to be in a tough battle tonight against the Denver Nuggets. LA took game 1. The Nuggets took game 2. So the series is tied 2-2. Game 3 is tonight. And Kawhi Leonard didn't show up previous game, but I want to know what your take is. Who do you think will win game 3 overall this series? And can Kawhi Leonard bounce back from that horrible shooting performance he had in game 2?
Well, if Jokic doesn't play tonight, then I'd take the Clippers definitely in this game because he's questionable. Will end up playing, but it's questionable. There's a good chance he could miss the game. So if Jokic misses tonight's game, I'll definitely take the Clippers. I had Utah beating Denver. I admit I was wrong on that, but Denver, I didn't think Denver would pull it through. I think with that series, just to trace back this a little bit, I think Utah, they just had too much on their plate. I think they need another veteran to pull it off. But shout out to Denver because I didn't think they're a younger team than Utah, and I thought they weren't going to be able to pull it off. But those young guys, man, this Jokic and Gary Harris and Jamal Murray, those guys are some ballers, especially Jamal Murray. He's just erupted these playoff series, and he's definitely going to be you can tell he's going to be an elite level talent if he isn't already. And then Jokic, we already know he's always been a top 10, top 5 center in the league. But if Jokic doesn't play tonight, that's going to be a big difference maker for them. But I have the Clippers winning this series still. It might be a tough one because if Denver can keep this ball rolling, I could see it going 6 or 7 games. But I still will take the Clippers over Denver. They won the last game. Denver won the last game, but I don't think they're gonna. Especially, I think Murray's gonna burn out eventually because Murray has had to take a lot of the load on his shoulders. I mean, of course, Jokic is doing his thing too. Gary Harris and those guys, but I just don't see it going for much longer. I'd like to see Kawhi and those guys step up. Paul George, he had a decent game. He had 22, last game. Kawhi only had 13, so I need to see more from that. And I don't think Kawhi is going to have another 13-point game. It was his first game, I believe. It was like he hasn't had a game under 15 points in the playoffs since like
San Antonio.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a very rare thing to happen. So I think Kawhi is going to get back on his game and they're going to pull it through. But the way Denver's playing, they could go 6 or 7 games, and I do think it's going to happen.
I'm going to call for upset here. I believe Denver is going to go 6 games, but I believe Denver has the tools to upset the Clippers. And here's why. We always talked about the NBA playoffs is all about matchups, not we obviously every NBA fan wants to see the Lakers and the Clippers in the Western Conference Finals, big TV ratings, we got the Battle of LA, all that. But it's all about matchups. You look at, Jokic, you can say right now he's the best center remaining in the playoffs. Who's going to guard him? Montrezl Harrell. I believe he dropped 26 or 26 points last night, the other night on Montrezl Harrell. So you don't really have a big on the Clippers that could defend Jokic. Now, obviously with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, if they start to play like the superstar that we know that they are, it's going to be pretty hard for Denver to stop them. But Denver has a lot of wings, especially with Michael Porter Jr. He's starting to, get in the thick of things. We got to see, Gary Harris. They could throw somebody at him. Jamal Murray, he could probably defend, Paul George from time to time. So Denver has those wings and those bodies to kind of not contain, but to bother them just a little bit, just to get them off the game. If you hope Kawhi Leonard has another 4-17 shooting night, that's going to go into your favor. But the thing what I liked about Denver, they are probably the most deepest team in the entire NBA. You talk about they haven't even developed Bol yet. Michael Porter Jr. is just starting to come into his own. Gary Harris is a knockdown shooter, and he could defend on the defensive side of the basketball against the twos or the threes. Jamal Murray, he's looking like this is going to be his team. Everybody talk about, Denver's Jokic team, but Jamal Murray, especially this run that he's had in the NBA playoffs, especially against the first round versus Utah, where the man averaged pretty much like almost 50 points a game. It's looked like he's kind of taking the mantle from Jokic. Like, hey, this is my team now. Like, I'm going on this historic scoring run, especially against Donovan Mitchell, because that was just a flat-out duo. But he's like, you know what? He could get to his shot. There's really nobody on the Clippers that can really guard him from the two. Now, they're probably going to have to put Kawhi Leonard on him to kind of isolate him a little bit. But let's be real. We all know why Jamal Murray is playing lights out, because his girlfriend is not going to be in the bubble. But let's save that for another day. I mean, let's say that for another. I mean, the man's happy to see his girl now. When he found out that rule that his girl could come in the bubble in the second round, he put his MJ aura on. Man started scoring like 50 points a game. But I feel like Denver style of play, their roster, their talent has enough to beat the Clippers. I believe it's gonna be a tough 7-game series. I'm not surprised if the Lakers will win, because again, going back to Denver, they just had a hard-fought 7-game series, come back 3-1 against Utah. But I will be calling for an upset. I believe this is gonna go all the way 7. I'm going with the Denver Nuggets to overtake the Clippers and I will believe we will see a Denver versus Houston Western Conference Finals matchup. I'm calling an upset on both sides. Houston upset the Lakers. Denver upset the Clippers. But I'm not gonna put nothing to it though.
See, I can't completely disagree with you because you're right. Denver is just they have so much talent, and they're not even nowhere near their peak levels yet. Like Bobo, all those guys, none of them, not even Jamal Murray. I don't think this is his I don't think this is his peak. He's already balling out now, but I think he can get much better. Same with Jokic, he can get much better. So, but I want to say though, because the Clippers, they really lost that game because they kind of put themselves in a really huge slump in the first quarter. Remember, they got outscored 44-25. Jokic and Jamal Murray just went off in the first half. But then in the second half, they were just non-existent. Murray only had 7 points. Jokic only had 2 points in the second half in the last game. And the Clippers outscored the Nuggets in the last 3 quarters. I just think they just put themselves, and the Clippers do have a tendency to do that. They kind of put themselves in a slump in the first couple of quarters and they come back. But I think they learned their lesson, especially because the Clippers, they shut them down in that second half. I do think the Clippers will end up pulling this off, but I wouldn't be surprised if Denver pulled this off. They just have so much talent, but I just don't think they're there yet. I don't think this is their year yet to pull off an upset this big. I don't think it's their year yet, but soon, definitely.
And one thing I saw about the Clippers is that, well, I picked Denver's going to win the series in an upset is because, especially in game one and really game two, they looked a little, rusty because remember, they had a long period off. After they beat Dallas 6 games, they were going to have about 3-4 days off. And then we had that break with the NBA players protesting and boycotting. So 2-3 days of games got pushed back. So that 4 days turned into 7 days. So they had a whole week off while Denver just finished a rough 7-game series. Basketball is all about rhythm and momentum. If you keep playing, you're going to have the rhythm. If you don't play for a week and you go out against high competition, you're going to be rusty. You don't even know what to do. You're going to look like Russell Westbrook forgetting how to pass a basketball. You know what I mean? So that's what I saw from the Clippers, especially. I would say I saw it a little bit in game one, but really more in game two because it kind of looks like, all right, yes, Jamal Murray and Jokic went off, but they didn't have that energy, that charisma that they usually play with and the rhythm because they kind of looked like they were just out of it. But same thing I said too, Doc Rivers, if the Clippers do not even get to the Western Conference Finals, whoever it may be, maybe against against the Lakers or the Rockets, I believe that they've got to seriously look at getting a new coach because, like I said before, when we did the show a couple weeks back, this man has had great teams, especially the first go around when they had Lob City, Chris Paul, CP3, DeAndre Jordan, Blake Griffin, Jamal Crawford, Matt Barnes, JJ Redick. You mean to tell me that team, the best that they could do, I believe it was get to a second or Western Conference Finals, probably just 1 year, maybe a second round of the West, and you had that talent of a roster, and you couldn't even get to an NBA Finals. And Doc Rivers, we all go for how he's a leader of men. He's one of the greatest coaches right now in the game, along with Popovich and all those guys. But dude, you haven't been to an NBA Finals since 2010. You have a 10-year absence, and you're recognized as one of the, probably you could say maybe top 15, top 20 coaches of all time. But you only have one championship to show for it, and one Finals appearance in the last 10 years to show for it. And it's not like they're giving them scrub teams. This Clippers team, as we mentioned, equipped to go to the NBA Finals. You have last year's Finals MVP on your team. You have Paul George on your team. You have a deep roster. You got to get it done either this year or next year. Whenever his contract expires, I believe that if they don't even make it to a Western Conference Finals, I will not be surprised. ESPN breaking news: Clippers fire Doc Rivers as head coach, because at some point in time, like we'll reference this back to football. Everybody loves to talk about how great Aaron Rodgers is, and he's a great quarterback. The man only has one Super Bowl to show for it. If he, if he's had more, then we could put them in that pantheon greats of QBs. But man only got one ring as a head coach, and we're calling this man one of the top 15 greatest coaches of all time. He's got to get it done this year, next year. If he don't, I believe the Clippers are going to give him the boot.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised, and I'd have to agree with you on that because not off the fact that Doc Rivers is a bad coach. It's just that maybe his time is just done. Maybe the NBA is changing. Younger coaches and younger guys are getting hired or getting these jobs and stuff. And these teams, they relate with younger guys more because obviously they're younger dudes themselves. So they're going to relate with younger coaches and stuff like that. You already see in Houston that, D'Antoni might be out. Even if I mean, they're definitely not going to go to the finals, but even if they were to, make it far or whatever, D'Antoni's still probably going to be fired after this season. So you just see the NBA shifting to a younger play style, a younger coaching system, a younger GM system, all that stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised. And then also, I think Doc, he has to fix up his rotation a little bit like that. Patrick Beverley getting like 15 minutes and only having 2 points. And I'm not going to lie, Patrick Beverley, he brings that energy and all that stuff, but he's kind of been exposed. He's not the great defender we always thought he was, or at least I did. It's not like Jamal Murray and Gary Harris had a bad game. Gary Harris had shot 50% from the field, had a 50% field goal percentage and had 13 points. And Jamal Murray had a 47% field goal percentage with 27 points. So it's not like, Patrick Beverley had like a huge game defensively. So especially when they have Reggie Jackson, who's a legit backup point guard, I think I'd rather see him play. He kind of has to, lean back on Patrick Beverley because Beverley's kind of, he's kind of a mismatch now because he only had 2 points and he's not even playing good defensively. So I definitely agree with that because you see Doc Rivers, his rotations, I don't think is that good right now. And as these teams get younger, they're probably going to want a younger coach.
And the thing with Doc Rivers, I feel like since he's got to LA, because his first couple years with the Clippers, he was, I believe, president, and he was in charge of personnel decisions. And we all know what happened with Chris Paul and when his son Austin Rivers on the team. That was just a complete mess. And they eventually had to trade Austin Rivers because he's like, dude, you can't protect your son. If we gotta move your son in order to make the team better, he's got to go. So they took that title away from him. I believe that Doc Rivers is afraid to discipline his players. Is because you look at what Lou Williams did. Man went to a strip joint, came back. We didn't even hear no reports of Lou Williams getting fined for conduct detrimental to the team or nothing. Like the NBA bubble was there so players don't leave. If you have to leave, it's only got to be for an emergency, not to go see women shaking their booties. Let's be real. And he did not get fined for that, or anything came out for that, for what Doc Rivers reprimanded him from that. So that's one. Markieff Morris. Whatever you can say, if he's a dirty player or not, I don't think some of this stuff was intentional. But his antics versus Luka Doncic in the first round, tripping Luka, I believe he could say that he was the cause of Luka turning his ankle and getting that ankle injury. You didn't see Doc Rivers get into him, reprimand him, or nothing. When, I don't want to bring this up because I don't think it's a big deal at all. But when we saw Montrezl Harrell utter the words "be a white boy" to Luka Doncic, and everybody on Twitter had a storm talk about, oh, you can't do this, you do all life matter, all that stuff like that. That's the subject for a different day. But I didn't hear any reports or see Doc Rivers talk about, hey, you know what, Montrez, this is a sensitive time. You can't be saying that type of stuff. Just discipline him just a little bit. We've always called Doc Rivers, he's a leader of men, he's this and that. But when it comes down to disciplining his players and putting them in check when they do something wrong, he has not done that. We won't see him do that. We saw him do that in Boston with KG, Paul Pierce, and Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen. But when it comes to this team, especially with what Paul George has done, he hasn't done anything really, but the social media where he's like, oh, I don't care what people say about me. Well, dude, we'll talk about you because you play like trash. And we'll talk about you in the light when you play good, but if you play like garbage, we're going to talk about you in negative light because you play like trash. He hasn't reprimanded. I haven't seen him put his players in check what he used to do in Boston. And I feel like he kind of lost that authority power because it kind of seems like, wait a minute, I'm supposed to listen to this guy who's trying to protect his son not too far long ago from getting traded. Like, I feel like players kind of lost their respect with Doc. I feel like he's lost that kind of intimidating fear factor. And he's got to find some way to get that back. Because if any other team had their player leave to go to a strip club in an NBA bubble where you're supposed to stay in to not bring in any possible coronavirus outbreak, they would reprimand him, whether it be a little fine or a game suspension or something. He hasn't done that to none of his players. And I feel like that's where he lost that intimidating, that fear factor that he had in Boston. I feel like he doesn't have that with the Clippers.
I wouldn't really say it's a fear factor, or he's not really disciplining his players, because I feel like that's kind of a little slightly disrespectful to Doc Rivers, because again, he is a Hall of Fame coach. He's coached some great players. He had to deal with KG, and KG, you know how wild he was back in the day. So like, if you can control KG, I can't question your ability to coach at all. I just think it's more of a relationship thing. Like, again, as I said before, he's an older guy, more of an old school guy. So he's not going to be able to relate with these players more. Again, you're seeing a trend of younger coaches. Mike Malone with Denver, Steve Kerr, younger players and guys who've played, more in recent times, whether it was in the 90s and stuff like that. So I just think it's a matter of that. I don't want to go as far as to say, he's losing his players or he's not a strict coach, because that's Doc Rivers. He's dealt with some of the most difficult players to that you could ever manage. So I don't want to say that, but I just think it's just a age, and a relating thing, being relatable to your players and all that stuff.
But here's my thing about that, and I can see your point where, again, it is different times. You see a lot of younger coaches getting hired, so they could relate, because you got a lot of 20, 21, 22, 23-year-olds who are legit superstars in this league now, instead of usually having to wait till they're 25, 26, 27 in the 30s. But if you're a great coach and you see that, okay, times are changing, you have to adapt to the times. Whatever style of coaching that he had that worked in Boston when they won the 2008 championship, that's not going to work in 2020. That's a 12-year difference. Your players aren't going to listen to you if you're rah on them. But I'm just saying, if he sees that, it's like, all right, well, I got to talk to my coaching staff. What can I do to kind of get the ears and respect and fear factor a little bit of these players? Because again, if you ever coach who's just a little bit intimidating and fearful, that comes with respect and power. And it's like, all right, I got to listen to what this coach say, or else we don't do this, he's going to get on our asses next game. You know what I mean? Or in the next timeout. So that's what it is. And as your job as a great coach, you're supposed to, adapt and evolve to the times, not just stay in your certain way. I feel like he's kind of digressed in that way just a little bit, because just of that, I see he just doesn't have that discipline. I don't want to say fear factor, but just that discipline that he held and accountability that he held his players in Boston that he doesn't do now.
Yeah, but I just think, to your point though, I just think some coaches and some guys just aren't able to adapt. They are just stubborn. We see it. You probably have family members, or you just know people, or just politics in general. Some old people just don't adapt to the times. You see it in the NFL too. You see it in every sport. Tom Coughlin with the Jaguars. He's a great coach and a great football mind, but Jacksonville got rid of him because he just can't adapt with the times. He's too old school. He won't change his ways. So I just think it's a matter of that. But speaking on that subject, what do you think about the Steve Nash hire for the Brooklyn Nets?
I think, one, they had a long conversation with Kevin Durant first, because when Kevin Durant was in Golden State, him and Steve Nash developed a really great relationship. There's videos of Steve Nash working Kevin Durant out, of him working out with Kevin Durant, working on that jump shot, different types of skills, adding to his game. And there's been reports that since then, they've been in touch. They stayed in contact. And obviously, Kevin Durant had to sign off on this before they'd be like, all right, we're going to go hire Steve Nash. I think it's a great hire. The only thing is, I feel like they brought Nash more to handle personalities than X's and O's. I believe Jack Vaughn, who's going to be the lead assistant for the Brooklyn Nets, who was just the interim head coach for them in the bubble for the playoffs, I believe he's going to be more in charge of the X's and O's, and Steve Nash should be in charge of the personnel. Because when you have Kevin Durant, and he is unpredictable as hell, you don't know, one day he come in happy as hell, the next day he come pissed off at everybody and cuss out the media. He's one of those bipolar people. Same thing with Kyrie Irving. 1 minute the man's talking about the earth is flat, then he's happy shaking everybody's hands, and the next minute he's pissed off at somebody for something. And I believe that he can be able to kind of mend and control and handle Kevin Durant and Kyrie's personalities to kind of, so they don't, turn the team off in a way, because we've been hearing reports and rumors that, Kyrie Irving is not getting along with his Brooklyn teammates, and we've seen when Kyrie doesn't play, the Nets play better without him than with him. So I feel like that was more of a personnel type of coach to hire than X's and O's. And I feel like before they even talked to Kyrie about it, they gave KD a call, because again, KD's their best player. Achilles, whatever he's coming back from, he's come from Achilles, excuse me. They first called Kevin as like, Kevin, we know you and Nash are close. We're thinking about hiring this. Do you give the okay? Kevin Durant had to give the okay for this, and they called, let Kyrie know. So if they wouldn't have done this without a Kyrie Irving, KD, okay. But I feel like it was more to just to mend their personalities and to kind of get that team chemistry afloat. And then I believe Jack Vaughn will be more on the X's and O's side of the coaching. Don't get me wrong though, Steve Nash he knows his basketball. I mean, the man is a 2-time back-to-back NBA MVP, so he knows how to run plays and what to do in clutch situations because he's been there before. But I just feel like that was more just personnel. You handle the personnel. You could do the X's and O's from time to time, but I believe Jack Vaughn will be more on the X's and O's type of coach because he runs some great plays in the bubble for Karis LeVert, who he looks like he's going to be a stud in this league for years to come.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think with Jack Vaughn, I wouldn't be surprised if he was hired as a head coach this offseason or definitely next offseason because he's a great coach. I was kind of surprised they didn't promote him to head coach, but if they took this long to hire a coach, then you probably knew he wasn't going to get the job. But I'm really happy that they kept him because usually when you hire a new coach, usually the assistant coach gets cut. So I'm really happy they kept him. That just shows a sign of respect, and they respect Vaughn if they were able to keep him. But because you've heard a lot in news lately about the Nash hire and stuff, race and stuff like that. And to that point, I like to say, yes, it's somewhat true to a certain extent because there's definitely a bunch of coaches still. Like I haven't heard Mark Jackson get an interview. I haven't heard all these different black coaches get an interview. Ty Lue, who definitely deserves to get an interview at least, even though I heard he got an interview with Philadelphia. But I did, to that point, I'd agree. But at the same time, Steve Nash, when I heard the news, I was surprised. But at the same time, I like it because I don't think Steve Nash is one of those few people that you've never, ever, 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 ever heard anything bad about him. Like everybody loves the guy. Like I don't know anybody in the planet that hates this guy. So, oh, you kind of cut off for a minute. Yo, Worlds, you there?
Hello? I'm still here. Hold on, my camera went off.
Oh,
let me give me a minute.
You good?
I don't know what the hell happened. All right. Can you see me?
Yeah, I see you.
All right. Yeah, my mic just literally just like shut down. Not my mic, my camera. My bad.
Yeah. So where should we start from?
I heard you say about like the coaches, Mark Jackson not getting hired, Ty Lue. I'll
just start over from the whole Steve Nash topic.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely think Steve Nash was a great hire. You heard in news and stuff like that you heard a couple people complaining about the lack of black coaches getting interviewed for the job and not getting hired. And I'd agree with that. That's a good point. I still think there's coaches and stuff being blackballed, especially Mark Jackson. I don't know what he did, but he's definitely being blackballed right now. There's definitely coaches like Ty Lue that deserves to get another shot at head coach for sure. He's won a ring. He's dealt with star players before. He's been under Doc Rivers and played with some elite talent. He's played with Kobe and stuff like that. So Ty Lue deserves to get another head coaching gig. I don't know why he hasn't gotten one yet. I've heard he's gotten interviews with the 76ers. I'm not sure if that's true or not. But to that point, I would agree. But at the same time, with Steve Nash, he's such a good guy, and he's such a smart dude when it comes to X's and O's. You can just tell when you saw him play. So you can't really get mad at that hire because I've never heard anybody say anything negative about Steve Nash. Steve Nash is one of the nicest dudes, it seems like, in the league, just like in general. He's just a nice and genuine guy. I can't be mad at it, and you just know he was an elite talent, and he has that elite mindset. You just see when he used to play, you just see how he passed the ball and facilitate and stuff like that. So he's going to be a great coach. I think he's going to be a very good coach. I'm happy they kept Jack Vaughn. That just speaks levels to how talented Jack Vaughn is as a coach. By next offseason, I'd almost guarantee he's going to be a head coach because he's so good. But I like that they have that system going. I would agree that they're probably going to have Vaughn call maybe more plays until Nash gets more comfortable. And I think even the Nets know that Vaughn's probably going to get in the near future. So they're probably just going to help, Steve Nash get more acquainted with the team and how they run systems and stuff like that. And then eventually you probably see Vaughn leave, and then Nash will bring in his own system and stuff like that. But yeah, no, this is a great hire. Nash is loved by everybody. He works with so many NBA players. He's the godfather of RJ Barrett for the Knicks, and RJ Barrett always says amazing things about him. Again, you've never heard anybody say anything remotely bad about Steve Nash. So I love the hire. Would I've liked to see, maybe Vaughn get the gig, or maybe have some more black coaches get interviews and stuff like that? Yes, but I can't be mad at Steve Nash.